This is Charlie Flowe World Sports Show. I'm joined by head coach of the Houston Dash, Randy Waldrum. Well, thank you for calling me up, Randy.
You're welcome. Always a pleasure.
So season's coming down to an end, and then you'll be transitioning to the off-season mode and sure spending some time with Trinidad and Tobago. I know that you had said earlier in the year that, your goal for Houston Dash this year was to make the playoffs, but it's been quite a move from moving from last place to you could finish as high as fifth place this year.
Yeah, I think we're all competitors and ambitious, and our goal coming in was to be a playoff team, and I thought we had a really good run at that this year, Charlie. Disappointed that we're not going to make it, but at the same time, happy with the improvement that we made from last year's team. We got I think 12 new players on the roster from our expansion year. So we're much improved in so many areas, both on the field and off the field, that I've got to be pleased with the progress. There's still that side of me that goes back and looks at those 5 ties and says, gosh, if we win 3 of those and maybe we don't lose the first game to Boston, we're firmly entrenched in the playoffs, So, and every team can do that. Every team can go back and look at games they dropped and see how it plays out a little differently, but definitely big strides. So, although not happy for missing, happy still having the opportunity to finish in the middle of the table.
Yeah, it's definitely a challenge that every NWSL coach faces. It's not something probably you're used to in the college or other levels where you're losing nearly maybe third or fourth of your roster to World Cup call-ups. It is an opportunity for amateur players to make their name, but just that adjustment has got to be hard as a coach.
Well, it's been tough because I think the other side of that too is there's so much parity, in the league. It's the college game when you're at a place like a Notre Dame, you're stepping on the field, you're going to automatically be better than 90%, of your competition. And in this league, there's just not an easy game. And not only did we get better this year, but all the teams got better. If you look at the games this year, everybody was fully capable of beating each other, even the top teams. So it makes it difficult, and I think it was a hard year for all of us coaches and having to try to deal with the World Cup, and hopefully we learned some lessons, as a league, but hopefully U.S. Soccer learned some lessons too, how to better manage this going into the Olympics next year.
You got your final game against Chicago this weekend. You guys are mathematically out of the playoffs, but I think it'll be an interesting challenge because Chicago is still trying to fight for that 2 seed. So that when you're going on the road, that you actually have a game that means something for your opponents.
Well, it means it for the opponents, and to be honest with you, it means it still for us. The way we sold it to our players the last 2 games is we want to finish as high as we can, and now we at least control our own destiny in terms of we can finish 5th or we could finish as low as 7th, and we at least control that. So we got a little bit of a pride factor to play for ourselves. And then, as you mentioned, obviously Chicago has a lot to play for with, home field advantage and that possibility. And of course, they'll want to go into the playoffs on a positive note as well. So should be a really good game. And I'm happy that we're going to get to play out in Toyota Park as well, out on the big field where the Fire play.
Another thing is you guys were kind of one of those late add-ins and expansion teams, so you didn't really have a full off season. So this will be almost like year one that you've had a full continuous year, and you guys have got your brand name down there. So I'm sure it's getting more of a household name. People are knowing who the Dash are down in Houston.
Well, I think so, and obviously the World Cup helped us, just like it helped every team with that. And we saw our attendance jump drastically. Honestly, our ticket sales went up 114% after the World Cup, as it did across the league. So I think Houston is a sport town, and we needed more awareness, and that helped bring it to us. And you're right. I think that first year we came in with such a short window of time. I think 90 days to just go from not having a team to stepping on the field and playing our first game. It was a tough year, as an expansion team trying to put things together in such a short window. And, we had a golf season in that first year. And if we can put one more of those together this year, and I think we're going to be well entrenched to be a top team for years to come.
Yeah, that's always that thing going in with the expansion draft and trying to get players. And now that you've got a roster, how set do you think your roster is? Do you think that you're going to be making a decent amount of moves, or you're pretty set with your roster?
No, I think we still got a few moves to make, Charlie. That first year, I felt like, the way the team was built was basically just through the expansion draft, which no disrespect to those players that we got because they worked their tail off for us. But they were the players that were left unprotected or the reserves in most of the teams. So you go through that year young and inexperienced and with a lot of reserves, and you take your lumps. And then in that first off season, you're trying to make moves, but you don't really get players that you can move because they're players other teams don't want. You know, they were reserves. So it was a really difficult first year in the off season. We were fortunate to make some good moves and picking up players like Carly Lloyd and a Jess McDonald and a few players like that were more veteran players. And then we did okay, I think, with our international signings, but we had to give up some draft choices and some things that we didn't really want to do that. So I think this year, I feel like we're at least 3 players away from being where I want the team to be. And then I think not only those 3 players, but I think that you could see a couple more moves where we try to improve the depth of our roster. So I still think we're 5 or 6 moves away from being exactly where we want to be going into next season.
And also those stories that I've watched on some of the broadcasts about how you picked up Rachel Axon, it was, I think, through LinkedIn. I mean, I've actually never heard the story from you, so I'm curious how that all went down.
Well, actually, it's true. When I was at Notre Dame, we played Oregon State, which is where she played in one of our NCAA playoff games years ago. And, I was just going through my LinkedIn. I've got so many connections on there. I was kind of going through them, and there's a lot of players and a lot of agents and things like that I have on my LinkedIn, and then ran across, Rachel, and we connected, on LinkedIn, and just, one thing led to the other. How you doing? Yeah, where you playing now? What's going on in your life? And she let me know that she was playing in Norway, and I said, oh, okay, really? When's your contract up? And she let me know, and so it just kind of went from there. So yeah, it's been a great connection. Social media can be used in so many different ways. Between Twitter and LinkedIn, you never know what you're going to run into.
Yeah, it's interesting with just the players that they're almost their own agents. I'll get emails, same thing, of asking, do you know teams looking for this and that, and it's such a different view of how we're used to it in the top elite male athlete sports in America, where you don't have to see the top male athletes going out looking for a team, finding a way, reaching out. But I think it's very proactive, these players that really want to play, that they go that extra mile to try to find a team.
Well, they do. The players do it. I think as coaches, we do it as well. And that. You get it right on the head. And I think the other side of that, too, is, since we're not the Barcelona, a league that has La Liga, or we're not the English Premier League, or even the MLS with the money that's in those leagues, we have to be inventive in ways that we're going to find these players. And we don't have the budgets to go fly and all over the world to seek out these internationals and look at them. So yeah, we get creative with all of those type things to be able to find the players that want to play. And the same for those players. They don't want to spend exorbitant fees to agents to go help them find, teams, because they're not making enough money to a lot of them to really make it worth the while. So, it's kind of that two-way street. We're all searching each other out.
Yeah, it's very interesting. Like we said, budget too. Like the players have their personal budget. I'll talk to a lot of players in Europe that really, want to come to NWSL, and they'll be with the great thing about a lot of the NWSL have the open tryouts, but it's a lot of it. And some of these players, they can't even afford that flight to get over here.
Exactly. Yeah. No, it's a problem that we face, and hopefully, if we went back 20 years ago at the beginning of the MLS, we probably saw a lot of those things that people can remember that far back. We probably saw a lot of those similar things going on, in the infancy of the MLS, and now look where they are. So hopefully you and I are having this discussion 10 years from now, and we're going, remember when we talked about that, and hopefully things will be much better, in the growth of this league and the stability of the league. And so, keep our fingers crossed that we're on the ground floor of something really special, that we see a lot of change in the women's game over the next decade.
Yeah, and the interesting thing about, you got a couple of your players, Morgan Bryan and Klingenberg, living with Van Gundy. It's just the interesting fact that a lot of people don't realize that a lot of these players are living in host families, might live in a tiny little room in a basement somewhere.
Yeah, and every NWSL team does it differently, with the host family situations. And so I think the fans don't realize it. I think, the general public clearly doesn't realize it, that these are the sacrifices these players are making just in order to get to play in a league and continue, playing for a few years after their college careers are over, so an awful lot of sacrifices. And like I said, talking about 10 years down the road, those players that will be coming into the league in that time, there won't be host families anymore, and they'll be living comfortably and making a good living, and they'll owe this generation of players a long line of gratitude, for kind of, making these sacrifices to make this league grow.
And talk about other thing about like budget. You coach with Trinidad and Tobago's women's team. You guys were very, very close to making the Women's World Cup, but just the atmosphere in that game that you guys had. I mean, it was a sold-out stadium, and you guys had a buzz going on in Trinidad and Tobago just for women's soccer.
Well, we really did. The opening event I took them into was a year ago, August. We had the Caribbean qualifiers before we had to qualify through the Caribbean Union before we could qualify for CONCACAF and for the World Cup qualifiers. And I think we had about 1,500 people in that same stadium that saw us beat Jamaica to win the Caribbean Championship. And then, you fast forward to, 4 months later, three and a half months later, whatever it is, and you're playing your final leg of the World Cup qualifier, and you've now captured a nation's, backing, and we put 20,000 in the stadium. So it was a fantastic time to see the growth and to see the excitement for that women's team. And unfortunately, Charlie, we haven't capitalized on it. The team's gone dormant since then, and outside of the Pan Am Games, they didn't prepare properly for it either, and still running into the same issues financially, and the same kind of things that the players don't have what they need to really take that program forward. But we're still going to plug away. We'll try to come in as soon as our season's over here. I'll step back over and try to get the ball rolling and get them energized again, and try to get them ready for the CFUs to hopefully go through the same process with the Olympic qualifiers.
Obviously one of the big thing is facing these smaller developing things is budget, and there's also like basic transportation and even just basic gear that some of these players don't even have proper boots, and they can't find, a way to even get to your practices.
Yeah, they don't. I mean, when I found that out when I went there last time, I mean, oftentimes we'd have 6 or 8 players at training, and that's unheard of here in the States. And the reason was because they didn't have the money to catch, the various kinds of methods of transportation just to get to training. And none of them eat properly, and none of them have money within their families. And, you're right, just the general things we take for granted. I mean, they don't have the shoes. They don't have shin guards. They don't have, we didn't even have athletic training supplies for our trainer to be able to wrap ankles or take care of injuries. It's when you don't even have a medical kit there to practice. You don't have a ball bag. You have a black hefty trash bag as your equipment bag. I mean, it's the things that our kids here in the States just have no idea how good they have it. And those players there don't have it good, and yet they don't know a lot better other than those that have been in the States in the college system, and they just play because they genuinely love the game, and they just hope that someday they have the opportunity to get a few extra dollars in their pocket based on them playing for their national team. But it's really sad. It's really sad, and it's a situation that around the world we've got to find a way to help these emerging countries provide not only for the men's teams but for the women's teams for sure.
Yeah, it's just getting the basic funding so you can actually run I won't say a legit program, because I mean the struggles you come up with are something I don't even face at the club level, that it's just a given when kids are dropped off at the age of 10, 11, 12, they're going to have shin guards, socks, multiple boots, and everything. They're ready to rock and roll.
Yeah. No, I mean you're right. It's a shame that you can imagine that a U10 or 11-year-old player has got all the resources that they need to develop at that age, and you're talking about a senior women's national team of a country that, like Trinidad, that's doesn't have a lot, but there's countries that are in much worse shape than Trinidad and Tobago, and yet those players can't find a way to even get an ankle taped, for everyday training. I mean, I can't tell you the number of days we turned up to training we didn't even have water,
Wow.
at the training field. So it's really so much more difficult to do, and that's why I was so proud of that team, Charlie. I mean, we accomplished so much even though we didn't make the ultimate goal, which, would have really helped us turn the corner, had we. But gosh, considering the poor training facilities and the poor, equipment and not having the funding to really prepare properly, it's amazing. I laugh. We played 3 teams to prepare for CONCACAF, before we came to Kansas City to open up against the U.S. And I looked at the U.S. schedule, and I looked at Mexico's and Canada, and those teams were playing in the last calendar year, teams like France, Germany, Switzerland, they were playing each other. I mean, they had all of these games to prepare for, and we played a U16 boys team in Trinidad. We played an over 50. In fact, it was the Strike Force, the immense team that lost to Caligari when the U.S. beat Trinidad and Tobago in 1989 to qualify for the World Cup. That team is still together. They're all over 50 now.
Wow.
We played that team. And then the third team we played is when we got to Dallas, we played the U18 FC Dallas team. That was our 3 games to prepare for the U.S. in, World Cup qualifying. So, I mean, it's just, it's unheard of that that's the kind of preparation that you have going into something that's important as the World Cup and trying to prepare for it. And so proud of the players, and that's why I continue to do it. I'm not getting paid. It's just something that I feel strongly about giving my time, and hopefully can make a little bit of difference in those young ladies' lives over there.
And I'm sure the emotions were high. You go into CONCACAF and you started turning heads. You had some successful results. Obviously you didn't go into the Women's World Cup, but just getting the results and getting just the women's program's name, worldwide, and you definitely turned some heads, and you played some very decent matches. So there's that time where you probably get humble, but you don't want to get too humbled.
Yeah. No, I mean, I was really proud of them because, we didn't even have the entire team together until 2 days before we played the U.S. because I had 6 players playing in U.S. colleges. So they arrived 2 days before we played the U.S. So we really had 1 day of practice to
Wow.
put our game plan in of how we were going to play the U.S. And we played really well. We lost that game 1-0, but we were organized and we made it very difficult for them. And so yeah, I mean, you are proud of the results. People may or may not remember, but we lost to after getting out of our group, we lose to Costa Rica in penalty kicks. If we win that game, we qualify. We get one more chance with Mexico, and we're winning. We scored the go-ahead goal with 12 minutes left, and then they score with 11 minutes left to tie it, and we lose in overtime. So, we had so many chances to be so close, and then at the end, when you don't make it, you do get humbled. And I don't know what would have happened had we made it. I don't know how we would have fared because I don't have any idea how financially we would have prepared properly for the World Cup. But I certainly would have loved to have had the opportunity to have gotten there, and maybe it would have pushed the corporate Trinidad to even get more involved. And who knows, maybe the funding would have come. But yeah, you get more humble just basically when you look at it and it's all over, and you look at your players and you look at each of their home lives and you realize how much that journey meant for each one of those players individually. That's when it really brings it back, into perspective for you.
I want to thank you so much for your time, Randy. All the stuff you're doing is great. We love, watching Trinidad. It's kind of like, I feel like it was kind of like America's adopted team during the qualifiers. We're like, as long as U.S. gets through and we can see Trinidad get through, we'll be happy.
Yeah, no, I appreciate it. Thanks for having me. And I can tell you we felt that way as well. All of our players felt that way. And I can't say thank you enough to all the players, the people here in the U.S. that supported us along the way. So, as always, thanks for having me.
All right, thank you, Coach Randy Waldrum. I'll talk to you soon.
Okay, bye-bye.